6:33 by my watch. We'll call this meeting to order. This meeting is being recorded. The meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Enosburg Falls is being conducted electronically in order to ensure the safety of all attendees and to maintain the compliance with Governor Scott's executive order. Per H 681 signed into law on March 30th, 2020, Section 6, there's a temporary suspension of the designated physical meeting location requirements of Vermont's open meeting law, VSA Section 312A1. In order to ensure that all attendees can hear clearly, your audio may be muted. When you wish to speak, you can raise your hand in the participant list or by submitting a chat request, or if you called in by pressing *9. Once acknowledged by the chair, please clearly state your name and then proceed with your question or comment. Please remember that when unmuted, all participants can hear any sounds in your environment. Again, this meeting is being recorded. All right, so let's do a roll call. Leonard?
Here.
Jason?
Here.
Heather?
Here.
Cindy?
Here.
All right, we got a full board. So first up on the agenda is modifications or changes. Does anybody have anything to add or change? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody here from the public today?
Shauna's not here?
Sorry?
Is Shauna here yet?
Yeah, Shauna is here.
Okay.
I think you're on an agenda item, right, Shauna?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so we'll move on to review and approval for minutes September 22, 2020. Everybody have a chance to look those over, and if you didn't find anything missing or wrong, I'll hear a motion to accept them.
I motion to accept the minutes.
All right, Cindy with the first. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Heather with a second. All those in favor of accepting the minutes from September 22nd, say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. All right, next up we have EV Holiday Parade, holiday lighting. That's you, Shauna.
Hi there. So I wanted to come back and give everybody an update of where we are at with a couple of things. So I'm gonna need to come back, I think, one more time to get final approval from you all. I'll email Jonathan after we're done to ask to be on your agenda for the next meeting. So I emailed Matt, which I know it doesn't apply for this meeting, but I was doing it and wanted to get it off my desk. So a park permit request that you guys hopefully can approve at the next meeting. But we are looking to change things up a little bit for a couple of reasons. COVID being one of the bigger reasons, but and social distancing and trying to limit gatherings of people. We want to light up the park on Saturday, November 28th, rather than the typical Christmas in Enosburg Day, and then have the parade on the following Saturday, which would be the traditional Christmas in Enosburg. So the park lighting looks a little bit different this year. Sandy, do you want to chime in real quickly on?
Sure. I apologize. I didn't send the pictures to you, Shauna, but
That's okay.
They kicked Raymond out of the hospital today.
Hey.
So
Yay.
yeah. So David at Trihorn and his wife and Raymond and I went down to Royalton, Vermont, to the Joseph Smith Memorial, where they have a very large, that you can drive a tractor trailer through, bridge. Kind of looks a little bit like a covered bridge. And it is strung up and over and down through the length of it.
Thank you, Cindy.
Oh, thank you, Cindy. That's the bridge in Royalton. Our version is much smaller, much shorter, still strung with lights, but 4 rather than the 1, where the sidewalks come into the center circular fountain. There are 4 perfect spots to have a bridge of hope that walks in toward the fountain, where there would be another lighted piece that kind of looks like a Christmas tree. These will be portable. They will be reusable. They'll be made out of PVC. David Tryhorn, and I hope he's not listening, I think he's doing soup night, is a genius. So I know that it's being done to exactamundo, and we are hoping that you will allow us to do this, because I feel very strongly in my heart that one, they really will be bridges of hope, and two, tourism-wise, when people find out about these beautiful lighted bridges, they will come from all over the place to socially distancing and wearing their masks, walk through those bridges in such a beautiful, ethereal, calming experience.
So technically, we've talked, after our EBA meeting today, David and Sally went to the village garage to find out what the clearance would have to be for the snowplow, for the tractor.
David measures everything.
Yeah, so the clearance would be 8 feet. That's what we understand from who David talked to and what he measured would need for the snowplow to go through. Cindy?
I think it's a little taller than that because we had 8 feet with the awning on the diner, and it still didn't work. So you might want to double check that.
Okay, I'll ask him. I will make a note. I'll ask him. So at any rate, that is factored into the structure. So there won't be any issues. It's wide enough, so there won't be any issues with the snowplow going through.
And if necessary, we will take turns shoveling it.
And so there are actually two 10-foot sections. So it would be 20 feet of lighting going to each spot. And then the tree, so David actually hung a cable to test this out. There would be a point above the fountain, the center middle of the fountain, high enough to drape lights down, blue lights like a tree. And then David would construct like a circular something, a PVC or circular hoop, I guess, for lack of a better word, to sit on the inside edge of the fountain that would be secured with weighted blocks or something that the lights would secure to. So they wouldn't just be dangling willy-nilly. So other than maybe a drape of lights around the doughboy fence, at this time, the thought is that would be the extent of the, and 4 poles, the 4 light poles.
The old ones.
Yeah, the old light poles that are in the park. You know what I'm talking about? Those would have lights around them again this year. We would still have to utilize the Lions power boxes, which they are willing to help us with again, and put those in. So that would be the extent of the lighting. We're not looking at this moment to light up a bunch of other trees because we really want this to kind of be the focal point in the park. The other thought that Dave Stetson mentioned to me is whether we could put lights on the trees going down Main Street. Sandy said years and years ago
About 20.
that was done. We'd have to get permission from building owners on the bank side to pull power off their buildings, and then of course the lighting, in the trees would. I don't know if you just see how St. Albans does it on their Main Street. Has anybody seen that? Yes. So they have light poles that they can pull power from, but the lighting basically goes from top to top to top. So it's high, it's not dangling, it's not in the snowplow's way or anything like that. So if we can gain permission from those building owners, and I need to reach out to them this week, then we would like to do that, put lights on Main Street. And then the question about the other side of the street is and Jonathan mentioned this morning that it'd probably be a conversation for David Wescombe. I didn't know if there was a way to pull any additional power or to plug in anything additional into the poles where they, can you hold on 1 second? Sorry. The poles where they light the wreaths, put the wreaths in. I don't know if there's any way to pull any additional power to potentially maybe just two spots to put lights in those trees. So that was my thought there as far as lighting. You guys have any initial reaction thoughts?
There should be power there anyway, because we're hanging the light up signs that go up and down Main Street anyway.
That's what I
Yeah.
was assuming, but I didn't know what the extent of it was as far as if it could take another, like, if it is a 2 outlet thing or I don't know.
Yeah, that's the question. There, as the board members will recall, last year we actually got new circuit boxes and moved them down lower on the poles so that the wreaths could be closer to the ground, which is what Mary Ann Mercy was looking for out of the wreaths, so that they wouldn't be so high on the utility poles. But I just don't know whether there are additional outlets within those power boxes to tap into, another type of lighting to be plugged into them. That's at the Enosburg Business Association meeting this morning, which I was at, and Shauna had brought that subject up at the EBA meeting. I had said probably the thing to do is when you figure out, how you think you want these lights to be established and on what poles, we should probably have a conversation with Dave Wescombe, the head line technician for our electric department, and see, what his thoughts are about that, if there is a way to tap into those power boxes or not. I just don't know the answer. It's more of a technical question that I think Dave needs to answer.
I'm wondering if maybe he might be able to maybe meet with me next week right on Main Street and I can kind of visualize with him what we're thinking. So that, I think I'll give him a call if it's okay with you guys and see if he is available to do that.
Let me know, Shauna.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that'd be fine, Shauna. You can just use the main number down to the office, and if Dave's not in, we'll certainly leave a message for him to give you a call and set up a meeting with you.
Okay, perfect. So as far as the tunnels go, we would obviously call DigSafe because David wants to be able to anchor them. So we would have to call DigSafe and make sure that that would work. But do you guys have any objections to us moving
How do you feel?
forward with that?
I don't
I'm
see.
excited by it.
Okay. The other thing I had mentioned to at the last meeting was the line item for lights. The EBA is funding the construction of the tunnels themselves, but we were hoping to utilize some of the funds from that line item for lights for the park. Dave just texted me actually and said that he has to reconstruct, redesign a little bit the structure because of his conversation about the snowplow today. So we are going to need some more lights than we originally thought, but I'm thinking it might be with the cost that ACE is giving us, that we're somewhere maybe $800 for lights. Would we be able to utilize that line item?
I was just going to ask you if you guys are going to have enough lights, because it sounds like there's going to be quite a few of them. But Matt, this may be a question for you. Isn't there $1,000 line item yearly
I
for?
think there is, yeah.
This year's appropriation for Christmas lighting is $500. There's $2,770 held over from prior years, so there's $3,272 available for Christmas lighting this year.
Well,
I
that's
don't
pretty
know
good.
if I
No.
don't know if John already has some any items earmarked for those funds with regard to the lighting that we do with the wreaths or not. But at this point, to my knowledge, that's unencumbered. Yeah, we do need to be aware of that. Gary usually every year replaces not all of the lighting on the wreath. Used to be the remember until I guess it was 2 years ago now. We used to do a different type of lighting. They were LED style lightings that were of different symbolic holiday themes, bells and trumpeters, reindeers, things like that. But 2 years ago, the board decided to go to a wreath system, which is different, but we have lights within the wreaths to, make them shiny and attractive during the evening. And we do have to still, although we're not replacing the wreaths, we do still have to replace the lights that are in the wreaths. And my understanding is the last couple of years, Gary has had to replace quite a few of those, but there certainly should, I believe there's enough to accommodate what you're asking for, Shauna. You're asking for $800, and I think we should be able to accommodate that between those, two different types of lighting expenses.
The lighting that we're purchasing is cool white LED lighting. The lighting that we have used the last 2 years, actually, I think 2 years ago is when we made the last purchase, was the more commercial grade. They were not LED and they drew a lot of power. So these actually, I think going back to the LED will be better. We can connect more strands together as well this way. And Ace is giving us a very, very generous price for them. So they are coming from Ace locally as well.
Shop local.
Awesome.
Will there be wreaths this year on Elm Street? There was 2 years ago. Last year there weren't any. And some people were complaining they'd come into Enosburg and there was nothing on the street. Then they got to the park and it was all lit up beautiful. But they said the entrance into the village was not nice.
Well, remember, Leonard, last spring, we spent a lot of time with Mary Ann
Right.
talking about exactly what poles the wreaths were going to go on. And we even had it down to the exact number of wreaths and specifically what poles were going to receive wreaths and which poles were not going to receive wreaths. And during those discussions, it was made clear to the board that Elm Street was not going to have wreaths on it, and you all agreed to that.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm just giving you a
so if you want
comments.
so if you want to change the design, then I guess, you need to tell staff that. I think you definitely need to tell Mary Ann that, because I remember that was one of the things that Mary Ann was kind of particular about, and you guys agreed with her thought process on that, is she wanted to keep the wreath design more compact than the way we had it with, the symbolic holiday LED style of lighting. She wanted it to be more centralized in kind of the core of the village. And the board actually voted on that and agreed to that during those discussions. So, you know, I'm just reminding you of the history behind it and why it was changed. So if you want to change it again, then you know, we'll do whatever people want done, but you need to tell us what you want done, and you may want to bring Mary Ann into the discussion if you do want to change it, because she was one of the folks that was kind of, you know, leading this charge on the wreath style of lighting.
Cindy, did you have something?
Yeah, do we still have all the old decorations that went on the poles?
Yeah, I kept those.
Is there any reason we can't put those like on all the
Other
different
places.
roads coming
Yeah.
into town? So there's at least something.
Well, again, this was part of the discussions that Mary Ann and the Board of Trustees had too. And it was Mary Ann's opinion that she didn't want to see a mix between the wreath style and the previous style with the symbolic lighting.
Who is Mary Ann?
Mary Ann Mercy was, or not was, is a resident of the village. She kind of spearheaded this movement, I guess I'll call it, to change completely the way that the village was doing holiday lighting on the utility poles. And this was kind of her brainchild. She spent a lot of time researching it and talking with the Board of Trustees about
I
it.
believe I was at that meeting way back when.
Yeah,
When you-
well, there were more than one. There was quite a few, and even more meetings with staff members about it as well, to work out the details of how this was going to be done. And in the end, we ended up changing. I mean, the village invested a pretty fair amount of money on the new power boxes, because the first year we tried to do this, Mary Ann was upset with the height
They were
that the
too high.
wreaths
Yeah,
were
I
up.
remember.
So we spent a pretty fair amount of money to then, in the second year we did it, to replace those boxes and move them all closer to the ground. I think they're now about 10 feet off from the sidewalk. So that's who Mary Ann is. She is a village resident, kind of spearheaded this whole thing, and has had multiple discussions with the board, and the board has approved her designs and comments about this. So that's the reason that it's done the way that it is today. And I really hope this doesn't turn into just like a big political mess. It should not be. I mean, these are holiday lights. This should be a nice thing. And, you know, I'd hate to see people start bickering and fighting about it.
And I have a
I
question.
understand.
Oh, Cindy, did you want to follow up?
No, go ahead. I'll save mine.
I can't recall the old wreaths or decorations. You said something like, I think, did you call them spirited or something?
For lack of a better word, I called them symbolic holiday.
Symbolic. There we
Yeah.
go. So were they like a?
They were LED lights, and they were different symbols of the holiday season. So like some were bells, some were reindeer.
Oh yes.
I don't know.
Stuff.
Pardon?
There was like stockings and candle and
Yeah,
So
stockings,
nothing that was
candles.
of a religious orientation that anybody would be offended by?
Well, there were no crosses. There was no, no Star of David. I don't think there were any religious symbols. I think it was all, kind of like Santa Claus and Christmas stockings and candlesticks and things like that, which that too is offensive to some people, as I'm
Everything.
sure.
Yeah,
Some people.
Yeah.
it's true, but those are still like specific related to certain holidays. But this is
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but there were no direct religious symbols that I can recall in there.
I don't think.
Okay. I think we should save this discussion for maybe the next meeting.
Can
so
I
we
just
can
make a
move
suggestion
on.
Sandy,
quickly? Just to put in your thought process, if you looked at these LED lights that you have, And looking in terms of, you know, maybe thinking we should be a little more welcoming at some ends of town. And you picked the least obtrusive of all of them, the simplest ones, because old time simplicity is what Marianne was after, you know, the old time Christmas look. So that maybe if you took the gentlest ones, shall we say, and talked to her about it, maybe that would be okay. That's all I got.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, it's the board's decision. I mean, it's not Mary Ann's decision, it's the board's decision.
I think it was nice
But-
last year and a lot of work went into that. So I don't think there's any reason to change.
Well, I'm not
From last year.
saying that we need to change because that's very centered into the village. But if you don't drive through the village, it doesn't look like we do anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like if you come in from Richford and go down the West Berkshire Road, you're not going to see anything.
Right.
There was some discussion in the past about taking the old LED lighting and doing Pleasant Street, I believe, Orchard Street, and Elm Street. But for now, we didn't do anything with that. That may be a topic for a future agenda item. But before we run too far on this one, I think we should get back to the park lighting, if that's okay.
I think that's an awesome idea, Shauna. I'm all for it.
So just to recap, do you need to vote to give me permission to purchase lights and like invoice the village or give the invoices? I'm fine to just buy them and like submit the invoices if that's how you'd like me to do them.
I believe that's how we did it in the past, yes. And there is money allocated specifically for that. So
Okay.
I would try to keep it under 1,000.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I know there's only 500 this year, but there was some leftover funds from last year. So
No, like I said, I'm thinking 800-ish.
okay.
Just from my original, calculation, and then with Dave saying he has to expand things. Okay, so I have your permission to do that. And I have permission to contact Dave and dig safe and move ahead with what our thoughts are for the park. Nobody objects to that. Everybody's good.
Good by me.
Okay. And Main Street lights as well, if I can get permission from the building owners and talk to Dave Wescombe and make sure it all makes sense with him as the electric guy.
Yep.
Okay. Parade. Can we talk parade for 1 second?
Okay.
Okay, real quick. Just an update for you. I'll come back at the next meeting with that all squared away. So I talked to Sheriff Longevan, actually backing up. So the idea around the parade is to expand the route to the June Dairy Day route, to increase social distancing. The reason we're having the park lighting separately is so people aren't all congregated on the park for the parade. So expand the route. That's the thought. I talked to Sheriff Longevan today, and he my question to him was, do you have any reservations or red flags with this being an evening parade and expanding the route? And he did not. I told him, and I'm telling you guys, the only way we would expand the route as the business association is if the Lions are on board to help us. I've talked to Tim Stetson. That is an agenda item for their next meeting, which is next Wednesday, which is perfect timing for me to come back to you the following Tuesday, right? The 4th Tuesday. So that's kind of where that is at. And either way, we want to have a parade. So I don't know if I need permission to have that holiday parade again. I think I kind of got it at the last meeting, but I just want to make sure whether it's expanded or not expanded, we want to have the parade. Are we okay to do that?
I don't have an issue with that as long as the Lions and law enforcement are on board. John, is there any permitting required for that?
No, we, in the past, we've just done it through a meeting where Shauna comes in and asks permission from the board to hold the parade. And so it's reflected in the minutes that you've given her permission, but we don't have a form or anything to fill out for that.
Okay.
at this time, we're not planning anything, like no vendors on the park, no, just simply a parade. We would have, Dave Stetson would be set up to kind of announce in front of the park, I guess, as people go through, similar to June Dairy Day, but not, no live music, nothing like what we've done in the past. Hopefully we can get back to that next year.
Yeah, the only thing I think I would add is that, and it sounds like you've been working on that anyway, Shauna, is that the board has made as part of the conditions of the parade that you get some law enforcement for traffic control, which it sounds like you're working
And the
on.
Lions.
Yep, and that anyone assisting with that have some kind of reflective clothing so that, if they are also directing traffic, they can be more easily seen to the public.
Sheriff Langevin told me today that, a minimum of 3 deputies he could have, minimum, he said. So he definitely did not have any reservations when I spoke to him.
Good.
So we're good to move forward, and I will see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good to me. If as long as no board members have any objections to that.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
Sounds
Christmas
great.
is coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Have a good night. I might hang out just to see what's going on if you guys don't mind.
Not at all.
All righty. So we'll move on to NWCUD overview and status report, and that's with Sean Coleman. Good evening, Sean.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. John had asked me to come and talk to you all about the Northwest Communications Union District because there was some interest on the board, I think, in what was going on. And John, correct me if I'm wrong, what the CUD was doing and any funding they might have in some of the activities behind the group. So I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to give you the facts tonight about what's been going on with the CUD. I'm with Northwest Regional Planning. We were asked by the Public Service Department and also approached, it was like the perfect storm, also approached by a couple municipalities to see if we would be willing to help a communications union district get organized and help with some of the administration of getting them organized, as we have done in the past with a lot of other committees like the Local Emergency Planning Committee, the Transportation Advisory Committee, the Brownfields Committee. So our role with the CUD is just to provide that backbone administrative support until they get more organized and up off the ground. And if they're certainly welcome to, hire their own staff at some point and not use our services anymore, that's fine. Our board is okay with that. So I think it was in our August board meeting, or the Regional Planning Commission, our board voted to, I think it was a vote. I think there was a motion to provide support. Everyone on board seemed to be okay with providing support to the formation of the CUD and help get them organized. So that's been our role. We were also asked, regional planning was also asked to apply for funding through the Emergency Management Planning Grant Program through the Vermont Emergency Management and the Department of Public Service for conducting broadband surveys, public Wi-Fi, not broadband surveys, let me back up. I was public Wi-Fi hotspot surveys in Franklin and Grand Isle County. So we had sent an intern and an AmeriCorps person and an EcoCorps person that we have on staff this year to go out and find all the Wi-Fi hotspots in the region, the public Wi-Fi hotspots, do a signal strength, range, and also to look at amenities around the Wi-Fi hotspot for people to use. Is it just a parking lot? Are there benches available outside of the town office or the library? is there a shelter or something that people can use to access it? All that information is getting fed up to the public service department, and they're going to put it all out on the internet on their website for the state. It's part of an effort to get information out there where public Wi-Fi hotspots are available. This was coming on the heels of the public service department going out to municipalities asking them if they had a grant program. I think it was through Microsoft to provide equipment to communities to implement public Wi-Fi hotspots. There was a round of funding. I'm not sure at what point this spring or summer that funding went out. And a lot of communities in the region responded to this survey and they got equipment. My understanding is that the public service department is likely they have a second round of funding coming in the near future. They're going to try to capture all those communities that didn't apply the first time. And then I'll talk about what the CUD is going to do for all those other communities that did apply and want more spots later on. So that's the broad background of what regional planning has been doing. Now, what the CUD has been doing, they're a relatively new organization. They voted to form two municipalities, Enosburg Town and Fairfax, voted to join, I believe on July 20th. They voted to join and form a district, which is allowable through Title 30 of the Vermont statutes. After they voted to join the same night on the 20th, Montgomery followed suit. Montgomery had a group of individuals that were interested in trying to develop some sort of broadband service, maybe contract with an ISP, internet service provider, to bring more broadband to Montgomery. They had a group that was working. Montgomery thought it would be good for them to also join into the district to tap into some expertise within the communities in the region, and also to have better access to funding that might be available through the CARES Act for broadband deployment in the state. So we had an organizational meeting, I think it was August 3rd, where they voted to, we came up with some draft bylaws we presented to them. They accepted the draft bylaws with a few changes. They came up with a chair who is Sean Keogh, whom you all know, with Enosburg Economic Development. Christopher Coda is a resident of Fairfax. He's the vice chair. And he does something with technology companies. I'm not sure exactly what his profession is, but he's quite knowledgeable with broadband and ISP services. I'm definitely not that knowledgeable. I'm kind of learning as we go along all the technical pieces, and it's pretty complicated from my perspective as a layperson. There's NRPC was asked to be the treasurer and clerk, so any grant funds that would be coming in, NRPC would help manage those until the district maybe decided to get their own treasurer or hire staff, an administrator or a bookkeeper to help manage their finances. Since the organizational meeting on August 3rd, there have been, I think, 8 other communities that have joined in the region. Right now there's Fairfield, Berkshire, Alberg, Bakersfield, Richford, Highgate, Georgia. They've all voted to join into the district, and they all have a representative who votes on behalf of the town, and they all have alternate individuals who fill in for the representatives who aren't at the meetings. Subsequent meetings, they've developed conflict of interest policy. They've come up with some goals for the CUD that I provided that to John. I think he sent it out to everybody, what they're hoping to do, what the district is hoping to do. And then they applied for and received.
Sean, I just want to let you know, I didn't realize you wanted that included in the board's packet, so I didn't include that. So if you feel that's relevant, probably you should go through that list.
Okay.
What I included in the board's packet related to this was the mission statement, which Sean Kyo had sent to me.
Okay, that's actually what it. Yeah, that's what it was, and it
Oh, okay.
included some of the goals about working towards universal access.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about a different email you had sent to me that had one of the grants listed in there that you guys had received.
Oh,
I,
okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
I might have been confused with the information that I sent to you as well,
Yeah.
John. I apologize for that.
Yeah. Okay, it's all good.
Okay.
Continue. Sorry.
So they developed their they developed their goals and policies. They've also applied for a CUD, a Communications Union District Planning Grant, which is through the Public Service Department. That's $100,000 grant through the Public Service Department for helping to somehow implement some to better services, Wi-Fi services within the region. Some of the areas that the CUD is hoping to target with this COVID planning grant and is to deploy additional Wi-Fi hotspots for those communities that have already applied for the first round through the Public Service Department that I mentioned earlier. Those communities aren't eligible for the second round, but we've had quite a few communities have identified spots within there that received funding, and they're looking for additional spots. So the CUD is hoping to support that. They also want to develop a customer survey for residents in the region to try to figure out what kind of services people have at their residence, what they're trying to come up with some baseline data on what's currently existing within the communities of the region. They also are hoping to retain a consultant to provide some technical expertise to the district. They're kind of looking. They've met with a few internet service providers already. They've held a few special meetings to try to understand what other districts in the state, what other smaller ISPs in the state have done, and also have invited some other companies from out west to come in and talk about what they've done to do something similar to deploying broadband and implementing a broadband service or an internet service provider type company to the region. And I don't think, and Matthew was in on one of the meetings at least, I don't think the goal of what the CUD is trying to do, I don't think they want to be an internet service provider. They're at least 3 to 5 years away from really implementing any kind of to getting anything to be shovel ready. And I don't know that they necessarily want to do that. I think they're hoping to partner with another internet service provider that can help them along and try to figure out what they want to do. Again, it's the real early stages for the group. So, they're starting at nothing, and right now they're just trying to build up they're trying to figure out what it is that they want to do with the funding. Unfortunately, with the CARES Act funding, it ends December 31st. So for the COVID planning grant, like I said, they're meeting tonight to put the RFP, to finalize the RFP and release it. And we're hoping to have responses back by mid-November to get somebody on board. The Vermont Community Foundation has awarded them an additional $10,000 to help with website, developing a website, maybe paying for staff or helping with some of the admin pieces if they needed mailings or equipment, like laptops for members that may or may not have them, or really anything to help support the district with their initial formation. There's potentially another $25,000 to $30,000 from the Vermont Community Foundation available to the district, and I'm not sure what that money is supposed to be used for at this point. And NRPC did receive a separate round of funding through the Public Service Department. it was a $60,000 grant for developing a feasibility study and a business plan. That funding, I think, has to be spent, I think, by March. And right now, I don't think that there's enough money, and based on the discussions of the district and the members of the district, and Sean's had extensive experience with Burlington Telecom when he was when he worked for Burlington Telecom in his previous life. I don't think there's enough money really to get a good feasibility study or a business plan. But they're hoping that at least the grant will pay for some sort of a baseline study that they can at least use and hopefully leverage additional funding to enhance the plan at some point in the near future. Because it sounds like there's a lot more money potentially coming from the federal government for broadband deployment. If a community wants to join, there is a resolution. This is all by statute. There's a resolution that a board would take action on and sign, that they would send one representative and up to 3, I think, alternates to the CUD if they're interested. If a municipality, say sometime down the road, if they join the CUD and then they decide they don't want any part of it, if there are any assets that the CUD has created while the municipality was a member, the municipality doesn't have to pay anything back. By statute, the way the CUDs are set up, there is actually it's written in statute that there's no actual cost to the taxpayers. There's no bond that's needed through the municipalities. There's no funding. It's meant to be all grant funded or federally funded. I could send, John, I could send you that statute if you're interested to share with the group. So that's pretty much my spiel on where the group is at. They've been meeting about every other week. Tonight they're forming subcommittees, a finance subcommittee, an executive subcommittee, and a planning subcommittee, so that they don't have to meet every week, that the subcommittees can meet every week. Also with the RFP going out, they'll need an executive committee to or the planning committee rather, to go through and figure out which proposal they want to go with. There's a lot of grant money right now being managed by NRPC, and a lot of the bank account was just established last week, and the grant funds were just deposited into it. They just got an insurance policy that will protect, I think it's a $1 million liability coverage, or up to $2 million in liability coverage. There's cyber protection, because a lot of individuals are using their own personal emails. So that will protect them if there's ever a data breach using their own identity or their personal information. And there is also, I think, an executive liability coverage in there as well. So that if there are any contracts that they're under, that in case the contracts go bad. So, it's all the baseline organizational items that the CUD has been tackling every week to get them where they're at now, to try to form. I think they're in better off shape than a lot of the other CUDs in the state that didn't have a lot of support in forming them, that we've been told by the Public Service District. There's been a lot of information that's been sent out to utility companies as well, about poll survey data, trying to collect, trying to figure out, I guess, I don't know, this is like way beyond my expertise, but trying to figure out what kind of infrastructure is on power poles currently. This CUD is not really interested in doing any kind of survey like that, because by the time they get around, like in 3 to 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, before they're shovel ready, all that poll data will be obsolete. The technology changes too fast. So that's pretty much where they're at. Are there any questions about the Communications Union District? Sean had, they're meeting at the same time. They're meeting tonight at 7 o'clock. Sean was going to join me to talk about some other items that the CUD is interested in doing, but he couldn't make it. But he said, if you have any questions, just to reach out to him directly.
Sean, I was curious, with the survey that you all, or they did with the hotspot areas, are they thinking of trying to support and enhance infrastructure around there for like benches or something? My mind automatically goes to, you know, the remote student that's trying to get some
Right.
homework done.
Right. Like, I can say, like, for my community, I live in Fairfax. The community, they were given a community center. The old Baptist building in Fairfax Village was I don't know, somehow the town ended up acquiring it, and the town worked to make that a new, just recently, like within the past couple of weeks, a Wi-Fi hotspot for the community, so that students who don't have internet access could come in and do, you know, remote learning, or they could have small groups working together, school groups working together on projects. You know, the region has a pretty large elderly population, so, and telehealth is a new thing that I know Northwest Medical Center and UVM and many hospitals are now using. I know my parents, I think, are doing it. They're in their late 80s now, and they're using it. So again, the Wi-Fi hotspots help, you know, keep people from having to trudge out in the winter and driving to St. Albans or driving to Burlington when they can do a checkup with their doctor over the internet. And they're hoping, like in the community center, I think, to have sort of a private area where residents can do that. So the CUD was going to fund, I think, some of the actual the infrastructure, I'm trying to think, the router, and they weren't trying to get, there wasn't any funding that they have to bring fiber like from the pole to the premise, but they're willing to pay for the equipment. So I don't know if that answers your question. So I don't think that they're looking for specifically for benches or creating like a bus type shelter or anything like that for people to use. I think that would be more on the municipality or whoever owns the facility. I know in Alberg, there's Islands in the Sun, the retirement or the community center, not retirement, community center. They're looking at, I think that they don't have a Wi-Fi hotspot now, so they're interested in putting one in there for all the different activities and all the different generations that use that facility. So I think the CUD is hoping to maybe fund that. And I think the Island Arts Center in Grand Isle also was interested in you know, getting sponsored to have a Wi-Fi hotspot there as well. Most of the communities in the region have at least one Wi-Fi hotspot, and some are looking to add on to that, especially with the stay-at-home order being extended every month.
Heather, I could add to that. I think it was probably in May, Sean Kyle acquired a hotspot and installed it at the Emergency Services Building, which is one of those designated hotspots that was put through that first round of funding. They were having some technical difficulties with the backhaul connection at the Emergency Services Building, so it was actually offline for a bit, and I've been waiting to hear from Sean when that came back online. So at this point, that's the only public hotspot that currently exists. But I know that Sean was reaching out to other facilities in town to try and identify additional spots. Potentially the West Enosburg store was a potential location, and or some of the other buildings in the center of town, like the community center, the town offices, places that have existing internet connection that can put up the router that's necessary to broadcast the Wi-Fi in a local area.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions about the CUD? So I'm not here to tonight I'm not here to advocate for it or against it. It's completely up to you. If you have any concerns about joining or want more information, I would definitely suggest you talk to Sean, Sean Cayo, to get more information about the CUD and what they're hoping to do. I think, you know, their big vision and their big hope is obviously to hit a lot of the unserved or underserved areas in the region and the communities that are members. I think their long-term goal is to have the ability to partner with an internet service provider, or at least a utility that could lay fiber and have the fiber be open source so that any internet service provider could latch onto it and use the space. I think that is what they're going for. Currently, the internet speeds, the FCC standard, I believe, is 24 up and 3 down. They're hoping for 100 symmetrical service. They would like to see that. That's part of their goal. They think that the current standard, I believe, is 10 or 20 years old and needs to be updated. So they're definitely aggressive in their approach. They have very little resources at this time to really do anything, but they're at the very beginning. It's a kind of a grassroots effort by the communities to definitely improve services in the region.
John, I have a little bit of a technical question for you.
I'll try to answer it.
So if we get fiber up within the next year or so, how long would that fiber be relevant for before it needs to be exchanged or upgraded?
That's a great question, and one that I definitely cannot answer. I don't know. Again, the way the technology changes so frequently, I don't know. The CUD did meet with Franklin Telephone last week with Kim Gates, and she was explaining some of their business model and some of the fiber that they use, and that was definitely, you know, a concern. I think that everyone on the CUD had is like, how, you know, if we come up with a feasibility study and a business plan and we get shovel ready, will the technology that we've been building up towards still be relevant? You know, nobody really knows what the future will bring. I can't speak like from a professional perspective on fiber at all. Maybe Sean Keogh would have way better knowledge than I would. But it's definitely a great question to ask, because who knows? I know that there was one proposal. I'll tell you this, that they do get, there are proposals that are put out for broadband expansion by existing internet service providers for different areas of the state. And the CUDs get an opportunity to comment on those. And some of the proposals that have come through included, one of the recommendations one of the companies wanted to do was to deploy blimps in the region that would be hotspots or offer wireless service. And the CUD wasn't in favor of that because wireless service obviously isn't very reliable, especially with the kind of weather that we have up here. So that wasn't really something that they saw as a real viable solution to bringing broadband everywhere. And I don't think that we want to, just knowing the region, everybody in the region, I don't know that people want to really see blimps floating around.
Every 5-year-old would.
Right. Right. And they're going to continue to meet with internet service providers in the state. Their goal is to meet with all the local small ones. There's a group out of Southern Vermont. I can't think of the name of them. A cable, I think they do cable and other telecom. Southern Vermont, they're meeting with in a couple weeks. Stowe Cable is coming. And then they're going to build up to the wireless, and then eventually, they're not in too much of a hurry to hear from Consolidated Communications or Comcast, because everybody knows what their business plan is, and that's pretty much to target the more dense areas. And the CUD really wants to remain focused on those areas that are unserved or underserved.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions? No.
I'm not seeing a downside. Doesn't seem to be any risk involved in joining the CUD.
I'll say I haven't, in meeting with a lot of the towns, a lot of the towns have said the very same thing, that there's no downside to joining, because you can opt out at any time. Any infrastructure, say 5 or 10 years from now, that the CUD deploys within your community, that remains in the community, and it becomes the property of the CUD. The CUD is responsible for the maintenance of the equipment, the upgrades. It's not on the municipality, or it's not on the residents of the municipality or the tax base. That's how it's written in statute. It's all, I mean, we all pay for it, right? But it's all federally funded.
Thank you, Sean.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Sean.
Good night.
Good.
Thank you.
Good to see you again,
Good night.
Sean. And I love that COVID-19 beard. It's looking good, buddy.
Thanks, John. Take care, everybody. We'll see you again.
See ya.
Keep warm.
Right.
All right. Up next, we have 2021 budget project discussion.
So in your packet, the board will find a copy of the budget timetable for 2021. This is something that you guys had reviewed and approved last month. So just stuck it in your packet, though, as sort of a reminder of the time frame that we're working on through the upcoming year's budget process. And this is meant to be an opportunity to, hear from you guys what sorts of projects or goals you would like to see in the upcoming budget. Whether it's a specific type of project or whether there's a mandate or something, like if you wanted to say we don't want to see any more than a 2% increase in taxes, or whatever your desires are. I'll share with you a few things that staff is currently working on to get numbers together for different items that we would like to propose in the budget. So few road projects that we'll be looking at are repaving Depot Street, repaving all of Church Street. So that's both sides of Church Street. And board will recall Church Street is intersected by Route 108, or Pearl Street as it's known locally. So there's kind of two sides to Church Street, but we're looking at repaving all of Church Street. And then Depot Street as well, which is kind of part of Church Street. As you approach Main Street, Church Street turns into Bismarck Street as you turn that corner, and then you end up on the intersection of Main Street. But it is technically a different street. Some other issues that we'll be looking at are replacing the damaged digger truck from the accident we had over the summer. That vehicle will need to be replaced. That was a total on that. We'll get a check from our insurance coverage to help with that, but won't more than likely pay for the cost of complete replacement of the digger. We're also discussing possibly getting a new bucket truck in the electric department as well. It's scheduled for, I believe it's the following year in our capital budget, but we're talking with Dave Westcom about the condition of that truck and whether it can go another couple years or whether he feels like it needs to be replaced now. But that's another possibility. Within the water department, we've got a 2-inch line that needs to be replaced on Route 108, locally known as West Enosburg Road, down to the intersection of Duffy Hill Road. There may be some other issues come up regarding bridge number 50. We'll have to sort through some of those and see where we land on that. But those are some of the projects that staff is looking into right now, and would love to hear from the board if there's anything specific that you would like to see in the preliminary budget. Or if not, and you want us to just put a budget together that we think has all of the projects that from our perspective as staff, the board should be considering, and take it from there, then that's fine too.
John,
So,
I would also look into getting a quote for some drainage on Depot Street. There seems to be a lot of water that's usually pooled up there, and I wouldn't want to repave it unless it's right as far as drainage goes. So maybe you can talk to Gary and just get a rough figure together for that as well.
yeah, I
Well,
did.
this morning it did rain, and where they did pave, it did make a big difference. There was not the big puddles for the trucks to spray us all when they went by.
I noticed tonight there's still a puddle on top of what they paved though.
Yeah, but not as bad as it
Not
was.
as bad.
I think there needs to be a catch basin installed right in that area.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I did mention that to Gary a couple of weeks ago. I can mention it to him again, Sam. I'll just let you know that his initial reaction to me was he felt that once Depot Street had been properly repaved again, it would correct a lot of the issues that we're having with different areas that have kind of sunken in particular, that one out in front of where the American Legion is, I know is a big problem there. We always get a lot of water collection in that area anytime there's a heavy rain. But just letting you know, that was Gary's initial reaction, was he thought a lot of those drainage problems were going to be corrected once the street was properly paved again. And some of those sinkhole issues, well, I shouldn't say sinkholes, they're not really sinkholes, but depressions in the street were taken care of. But I can mention it to him again and see,
Please.
yeah, and see if he wants to take another look at that and try and put together a proposal to improve the drainage beyond that.
And while we're on Depot Street, this relates to the Vital Village project too. There was talk about identifying where the road ends and where like would be a pedestrian spot, aka a sidewalk. Where's that conversation? Is that still just like a Vital Village and wouldn't have anything to do with the paving project, or is this something we should be thinking about as well?
Bump out?
No, not bump outs, but it's just because you can't really, the way it is right now, it's hard to tell where a parking lot ends, where what could potentially be a pedestrian walkway, and where the road ends. All three of those areas are just kind of seem like one. So
Yes.
Parking can be really odd there when businesses are full. And as a pedestrian and as a parent of a young child, it is very scary in that area.
In what area is this again, Heather? I'm
So
sorry.
like by Bates through is it Archibald Street? Yeah. So like that whole section right there where there's no formal crosswalk sidewalk.
So you're talking about coming down Railroad Street? My understanding.
No, I'm on Depot Street. I'm on Depot
Okay.
Street. So so there's a sidewalk that
So
comes
kind of
down and it stops.
The intersection of Depot and Archambault then?
Right there, there's no more sidewalk. So if you're going along the Legion and you're going along Bates, like it's all road / parking lot. I don't think it's supposed to really be that.
I think that's private property.
Is it?
So the state railway division has their hand in some of that as well. So if we dive into that, it may be a can of worms, but we can look into it, I guess.
I'm just talking
Well-
on the Depot side, not the Railroad Street side, but the Depot side?
Yeah,
Think.
I guess my comment to that would be there was some improvements around that area that were proposed in the Vital Village project, some of which we'll be looking at in the next phase of this Vital Village scoping study. Remember, we've got a scoping study that is going on right now. It's in its beginning stages, but that area along Depot Street is one of the priorities within this next phase of the Vital Village project itself. But then Sam is right too, because I think all of the areas that you're talking about are actually either privately owned or owned by the state of Vermont. I don't think any of it is actually owned by the village of Enosburg Falls. So it's going to take a very cooperative effort by multiple property owners, including our state government. And we all know nothing works very quickly when you're talking about the state of Vermont. So that one is, I'm not sure we can really build a solution to that into the 2021
Okay.
budget, but we will be talking about it and examining it through this next phase of the Vital Village project, which we're currently in right now. As I said, we're just in the beginning parts of it, but that'll be ramping up a little bit more through the winter time.
Okay, I just bring it up because while we're doing a project, if it connects to another project, we should be trying to tie it in together. Yeah, so it's curious that, so Bates and the American Legion own all the way up to the road then to Depot Street. They own that whole part, so it's not meant to be a pedestrian walkway.
I believe you're supposed to use the rail trail, so you go on the back side as opposed to walking on the
Okay.
street side.
Okay, interesting. What does it take to get a crosswalk?
Yes.
Because if
yes.
there's a crosswalk at Archibald to the other side of the street, the north side of Depot, then it would kind of move traffic a little bit better and it'd be less scary to cross the street.
I agree.
That's our road. I believe we need to make a crosswalk.
Yeah, so you want a crosswalk at the intersection of Archambault and Depot?
Yes, so like it would go to about where the Opera House parking lot is, roughly.
Yeah, okay. Well, if you want that done, I mean, we can talk about it. There are certain things that have to be done. It's not just painting, some lines in the road. There's some handicap requirements that you have to meet as well, coming from one sidewalk to the other. And, you've got to have steel plates in there now as a warning signal to people that are blind. So there is a little bit more to it, but if you want that examined, we can. But again, I would say we're going to be looking at a wide variety of issues on Depot Street as part of the Vital Village project, this next phase, the scoping study that we're just getting into right now. So, kind of like what you were saying before about trying to coordinate different things, we may want to bring that up under the discussions about the Vital Village project to try and coordinate that into other things that have been discussed and are going to be discussed about trying to make Depot Street a little more pedestrian friendly and also more friendly to automobile traffic as well. And I'll also tell you, I did bring up that subject with the consultants that we hired, Dubois and King, the engineering firm that we hired to help the village through this Vital Village scoping study phase. And I did bring that up to him that, we are perhaps going to repave Depot Street in 2021. And so I would like this engineering firm to keep that into consideration as we're talking about some of the other parts of what might be done along Depot Street to improve it, realizing at the same time, perhaps out of necessity, we may have to pave the street regardless of whether we've got some of these other larger issues resolved, right now or not. And so hopefully this engineering firm is going to take that into consideration, and also try to manage the discussions and the future plans of the street to recognize that it may get paved in 2021.
Matt, did you have something to add?
No, actually, John covered it. Thank you.
I had a couple of suggestions from people along the same lines as Heather was talking about. They thought we should have the flashing crosswalk signs along Main Street to make it safer for crossing since it's so busy.
Mm-hmm. That would be amazing.
Especially on the rail trail near Parkside and Dickinson Avenue
Mm-hmm.
crosswalk areas. But
Yep, the school. Yeah.
yeah,
I believe
Okay.
that was discussed during the Vital Village.
so I don't know if that's would be included with the Vital Village stuff or
Yeah,
conversation.
actually, we seem to be getting a lot of repeats of what has been discussed, previously under the Vital Village project. But yeah, actually, those things as well were talked about and are intended to be, further fleshed out as part of this next phase of the scoping study for Vital Village. So I think there's going to be discussion about that coming into the winter, and I think that would be the right time to talk about that and talk about the design and the engineering of how those things could happen. Yeah, I guess again, not that it's a bad idea, it's a good idea, and it's something that has been discussed and documented through the Vital Village process. But it is something that is intended to be covered under this next phase of the engineering scoping study that we're working on right now.
And I know that there are Vital Village meetings, and I have not attended many of them. I feel like we should align ourselves a little bit more right now, since we're talking about the same stuff. Either maybe we could try to be more of a presence at a Vital Village meeting or have a report during a trustees meeting. I know that there's information out there on it. I haven't looked for it, and it would be great if there was a way that it could come to us right now. Makes sense.
Updates, but we're in the middle of a study right now. So as soon as that study is up, I'm sure they'll have some information for us.
Right. So there was a committee that was appointed. There are several people that are on that committee, both your own staff, the engineering firm, and there's also some people from the town. Sean Caio is on that as development director for the town, and also Greta Brunswick from Regional Planning Commission. And we've been in kind of the discussion phase about this over the past several months about how to make this happen, especially in this challenging time that we're in with the pandemic, because it's going to be difficult to get public feedback because we can't meet. I mean, we can't physically meet, and some people are adverse to using the technology that we've been using since March in order to conduct our board meetings. We're going to have to continue to do that in some regard, but we're also talking about other possibilities. We might be able to get feedback from the public about the different potential projects that the engineering firm, Dubois and King, is working on our behalf. But we're going to be meeting again soon, next month. The committee is, and trying to line up a schedule of, different public engagement processes that we will start to do as we get into the winter time. So again, it's all been kind of in the planning stages the last couple of months. Remember, we just hired D&K engineers in July, I think it was. So it wasn't a long time ago. And we have had a couple of meetings with them during that time period, and we'll have more. This is a long-term process. This scoping study is intended to be done, I believe it's the end of July, if I'm remembering right, of next year. So we've got some work to do on that, and we will be reaching out to the public and, of course, to the Board of Trustees as things progress with this.
Okay. Is there
And I apologize for the puppy.
anybody wants included for next year's budget?
I had a couple other little things that people have brought up. I just thought I'd see what everyone thought. Picnic tables on the park for like picnics or when they get takeout food or whatever.
I just said that to Matt last night. We should have picnic tables at the park.
I don't know what everyone thinks about that, but
Sounds nice. It's a place for people to meet and chat with each other.
Just one or two, and I think Maple Park as well.
Yeah, I was Maple Park. I've been in there recently, quite a bit recently, and like the benches look like they could use some care.
Yes, the
They
fountain
seem
in
pretty-
Maple Park looks like it could
Yeah.
use some help too.
I like the plants in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I thought that was cute, but the benches looked a little. I was a little unsure about sitting on them.
yeah, the fountain doesn't work. It hasn't. That's why we put flowers in it. That was something that the board, maybe 10 years or so ago, had asked us to do in lieu of, the fountain not actually working. It would take a substantial amount of, investment in order to get that fountain working again. But in lieu of that, the board had asked if we could just plant some flowers in there to sort of make it look a little bit nicer, a little more, I don't know, festive or something. But yeah, if the board would like some maintenance on the benches in there, we can do that. And you're saying 2 benches at each park, or not benches, 2 picnic tables at each park? Is that what I'm hearing?
That would be nice.
Yeah, if we
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Jason?
yeah, like a community place for food scrap. It's because since it's mandatory to
Compost.
not throwing away their food scraps and everything, like a place to bring them, maybe near the community garden or somewhere. I don't know, like
Right.
instead of everyone having to buy their own composter, if there's a place, a big.
Is that community garden owned by the Lions Club? You're talking the one on Orchard Street?
Yeah.
Yeah, the situation with that property is it's actually owned by the village of Enosburg Falls. However, the village has leased the property to the Lions Club, and they've had a lease on it since the 1950s. And the current lease that they have, I think, goes about another like 21 years on it. So it's under the control of the Lions Club, but the village technically owns it. I mean, it might not be a bad thing to ask the Lions Club if, they're willing to designate a portion of that area up around where the community garden is as, a compost area or something that could be used. And those two things actually might blend together really well. You've got the community garden. If you had a compost pile right next to the community garden, people could use that as, fertilizer for their garden
It
space.
would it would need to be more of a commercialized compost bin because standard compost bins aren't hot enough to break down bones and keep animals out.
And they're probably not large enough to sustain a whole community's worth of compost.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know Kudak
You're
does
right.
it.
If you were looking at, quite honestly, if you're looking at trying to do a compost facility for the entire community, that's a big project. I can guarantee you we're not going to have that finished by 2021. You would have to do some serious designing, engineering. You would need state approvals. That's a whole other process to do something like that. I guess I thought you were thinking of just kind of a little space somewhere where people could dump it off. I will say, however, though, Jason, if people are calling you and asking you about what they're supposed to do with their compost, I know that at least some, I don't know if they're all doing it, but I know at least some of the garbage pickup services in the
Bakersfield.
community are also taking compost.
Oh.
They've got, if you call them and
Mhm.
say, I want a compost bin, they will give you a compost bin for free, and they will pick that compost bin up as just part of, their garbage and recycling program.
John, could the village look into because like I know that there's the solid waste centers. There's the various ones, like there's
Yeah,
the
for us,
Franklin County
it's,
one in Bakersfield, right? And I don't know what kind of system they have, but that you put in a big garbage can and somebody takes it away.
Yes, I had this question actually a couple years ago when I was looking over some budget stuff, and it seems that through the town, there's some money allocated to, I think, Casella. I asked a couple people, but I never really got a clear answer on that as to what that money's for. But I think that I think that it is something along those lines. However, I've never seen any sort of that community waste drop-off thing, but that would be something to look into. But I know that's through the town.
Okay, because that'd be really great because it sounds like sort of what Jason's looking for, which we used to try to bring our compost up to Bakersfield, but holding on to a week's worth of compost in the middle of the summer is disgusting. We had a system with if we filled our freezer full of compost, and my husband was really upset with me. But if we had a place like in town, like that was local, that was like more than one day a week, that'd be really cool. I don't know what that option is though. Not necessarily run by the village, but some organization takes it away.
Right.
yeah, I guess all we could do is try and research it. It sounds to me like that's a pretty ambitious project. Not that it couldn't be done, but I think you would, unless you had some way where, like Sam suggests, in Bakersfield, they're not actually doing it, they're not running it. The community is paying out of their tax base for a private firm. Sam thinks it's Casella to come in and haul that away on behalf of people. But I don't know much about it myself either, to be honest. I've never spoken with the town of Bakersfield, and actually I wasn't even aware that they took compost there. I was aware they did recycling of a number of different types of materials, and I think maybe even some hazardous waste, but I wasn't aware they were taking away compost there as well.
They do, and last I knew it was free, which is great because Casella's in Highgate charges, and it's costs more to compost than it does to throw it in the garbage, which isn't an incentive for people, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
What else you got, Jason?
Oh, just for roads, definitely Depot Street, and then the rest of Pleasant Street to the, since the top section that wasn't paved is kind of worse than some of it that was paved. And Missisquoi Street, maybe, I don't know what everyone thinks.
Missisquoi goes from like past Champlain Chevy all the way.
Champlain Chevy down to, well, it turns into dirt road.
Right, down at the cemetery,
Yeah.
it turns from asphalt to dirt.
I'll have to swing over there and check that one out.
So those are the ones that seemed pretty bad.
We can always get a budget on it. Whether or not we choose to include it is up to us, but we could always get the numbers for it.
Can I
Yeah,
include
it's
a
up
youth
to,
center? Can I put that on the wish list?
What's that, Heather?
Can I include a youth center on the wish list? The 1906 house is for sale. That I could do some amazing things with some youth projects there.
I thought we had a youth center or community center.
What happened with the rec center, the community?
Oh, but the building is way too small.
I know, but did they have?
There was some youth programming in there, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe
But enough to sustain it?
Armory.
Not like a full-on youth center, no. I was joking. I don't have a plan for what to do right now. I'm just throwing in my wild ideas.
So Jason, did you want staff to get some budget numbers for Missisquoi?
It came up that it was like a pretty in bad shape, a lot of parts of it. But
It is.
It wouldn't hurt to get some numbers, and we can always review them before we make any decisions. Do you want to add that to the project list?
sure.
Yes.
Okay.
okay,
Definitely the Depot Street that they're already working on, and Pleasant Street.
The top section of Pleasant Street as well?
Yeah.
okay. So just to recap then, so that I understand what you have added into the budget. The rest of Pleasant heading north to the intersection with Elm Street, all of Missisquoi Street, 2 picnic tables at Maple Park and at Lincoln Park. You'd like us to look into the issue of drainage on Depot Street in addition to paving Depot Street. Let's see, and then I'm not quite sure where we ended up on the discussion about the compost. Do you want us to just kind of research that and like report back to you at some point as to what it seems like next steps would be? I'm just not sure, quite how to go about creating that even. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for us to, actually build a project into the 2021 budget, because I'm just not sure, what we can really do to accommodate the request that you're making. I think we've got to do a fair amount of research first to figure out what next steps would be. So maybe we should just.
Yeah, I didn't know what went into it. I just there's people wanted to know if would be nice to have a place to bring their
Yeah.
Yeah, I
stuff.
think that your easiest thing would be to check with the areas that collect compost and see if there's a way that they could have a localized drop-off place within the village.
Is there a way to
And-
check with the state, seeing they made this a law that we need to do this, that they have any?
Yeah, I mean,
options or suggestions as to what municipalities should be doing?
yeah, and that's what I mean by research. We're going to have to research, what the options are out there, find out, what is plausible and how much does it cost, and then, consider those options with you guys as a board. And I think that's going to take a little while to work through those steps. I think, I don't think
Like not
that's,
just as simple as a dumpster and um, whoever collects that stuff can collect it periodically.
well, it might be, I mean, if you guys say you want, some kind of giant container to be set up at the Public Works garage, as an example, um, to be open to the public during normal business hours. I don't know. We'd have to talk with the state, and, we'd probably start with Bakersfield and, see what they were able to do and how they were able to work that out, and not, run afoul with our state government in order to make that work. And maybe there is a simple solution. Will cost some money, obviously. I mean, no one's going to haul that stuff away for free, but we could at least, if it is that simple and the state's fine with that, we could maybe at least get some budget numbers for you to consider from Casella or something to see. But I think we got to research it first, and then, come back to you with what we've been able to discover in our research.
Yeah, that sounds good, John. Let's get some more information first.
We have a garbage disposal. Are these going to be unlawful or what?
You mean let the sewer treatment plant compost it for you?
Well, yeah, we got it in the sink. The kitchen sink has the garbage disposal.
I'd say that's as close to composting as you're going to get.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, in a way, you're right, Leonard, but except that it is getting disposed of because it ends up, down in either in your septic system or in the wastewater plant.
Right, and it goes back into the ecosystem instead of a plastic bag that doesn't,
Which means it should be fine.
Yeah, just our state government gets very sensitive about environmental type issues. And so even though they want you to do these things, they're also going to hold your feet to the fire and make sure you're doing everything absolutely correct as well. So,
Okay, so
but we can research it and report back to you guys as soon as we've been able to get some good detail behind that.
John, there was one last item, and that was maintenance of the benches and fountain in Maple Park.
Right.
the fountain too, or just the benches?
I think the fountain probably just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. Obviously in the wintertime, it's not gonna amount to anything, but it just, I don't know.
Like painted,
Needs
you
some
mean, or-
detail. Just something to freshen it up a little bit. I don't think a lot of work needs to go into it, but.
Okay, well, we could, I guess I would call that a maintenance type item. It shouldn't be very much money you're not talking about like removing it and,
No,
having it completely refurbished or something. Yeah. So, yeah, I would consider that probably, not a lot of money, just kind of a maintenance type item.
Right.
Whoever does the flowers, they're really pretty.
Yeah.
All right.
Does anybody else have anything to add? I hate to push you along, but we're quite a bit behind schedule. No? Okay. So we got those things, and budget season will be here before we know it. So get ready.
So can I just ask real quickly, the 5 dates in January, are those like if we need them, or I should absolutely plan on, we're going to have those 5 dates?
I would definitely plan on 4. I mean, if you can do it, plan on all 5.
Okay.
Typically, we have not used all 5, to be honest with you, Heather. I would say on average, we've been able to get the budget passed in 4 meetings. I think we even had a couple of a couple of years where we were able to get it done in 3 meetings. Last year, however, though, we did use all 5. We used all 5 last year, and that was the first time in a very long time. I would say probably like 12 years at least, that we had needed to go to all 5 meetings. So that was unusual last year, but you just never know. And obviously it really all depends on the Board of Trustees. I always plan on 5 because, that's what we got available, and, you should be able to get a budget done in 5 meetings. But it's really up to you guys. You have to be comfortable with the budget that you put forward to the public to vote on. So, we got to just keep hammering on it until you guys feel okay about it and feel like, you can look people in the eye with a straight face and say, yes, this is the budget that we approved and brought forward for you guys to look at.
Okay.
And
If you can do it in 3 meetings, great. But if you need all 5 to get there, then, at least you got them there. At least they're scheduled.
bear in mind that the January 12th and January 26th are regular meetings, so they'll have a normal full agenda. And then the 5th, the 19th, and the 2nd are special meetings, which would only have budget topics.
Okay. Okay. Just.
I remember
trying to
there
get
were some
clarity
extra
here.
late nights also last year, so might want to
Yeah.
plan on that too.
You mean like the meetings were extra long?
Yeah, extra late.
I'll have an extra cup of coffee that day.
Yeah, when we get into, budget discussions, once you guys get a look at the preliminary budget, and that's all that is really, the talks that we just had about what you would like to see in the budget is all for discussion purposes at this point. I'm just trying to get an idea, and staff is trying to get an idea of what you would like to see in a proposed draft. And that's all that preliminary budget is. It's just a draft, your first draft that you'll be looking at. We as staff often go through 2 or 3 drafts before you ever see anything. We spend a long time working on just getting all the figures together and trying to put something together that we think is at least legitimate, something that, we can share with you for discussion purposes. And then once you get that preliminary draft, it's all on the table, and you guys will need to, have some honest discussions with each other about what your priorities are and what you really feel is important to keep in there, and what maybe should go for another year later down the road if you don't like the way that looks on the tax rate. So, but for the time being, if you can, yes, I would say get all 5 of those meetings scheduled if you can, Heather.
Okay. Yeah, I was expecting that we'd have extra meetings. I'm very focused on my calendar.
All right, if that's it for budget discussion, let's move on to holiday schedule.
Okay, very quick with this. Normally, I would ask for 2 different considerations from the board on this. Given the pandemic that we're currently in, and certainly we're going to be in through the holiday season, I have just one request, and that is if the board would approve it, to allow the office to be closed the day after Thanksgiving, as long as the employees all take some of their own personal time off, whether it's vacation time or comp time or a personal day. This is something historically the Board of Trustees have always done, but it's not, the day after Thanksgiving is not a holiday in our personnel policy. Thanksgiving is, but not the day after. But the board has always said they will allow the office to be closed the day after Thanksgiving as long as everybody takes some of their own time off to cover that. Is that agreeable to the board this year
Yep.
as well?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Normally, we would talk about a holiday luncheon for the employees. In addition, that's something we normally do at the holidays as well. But given the pandemic, that's not going to be a possibility this year. We just don't have a space big enough to get all the employees into one room together. And, you know, it's a catered event. The Dairy Center would have to like put up sneeze guards and stuff, which I'm not sure Lise even has that kind of mobile equipment that she could move to a different location to do that. But so we won't ask for that. So we appreciate very much you allowing the offices and village facilities to be closed the day after Thanksgiving, and we'll let the other employees know. Thank you very much.
Problem. What do you have for manager's report?
Okay. Try to get through this quick. We got Jesse here, and he's been very patient. First item, want to let the board know that it does appear that the electric disconnect moratorium is going to end on October 15th. It does appear to us that the Public Utility Commission is not going to extend that any further. So we have set ourselves up, sent out all of the proper notices to customers to be able to do a disconnect after the 15th. So just wanted to make you guys aware of that. We have been in contact with our customers to let them know that, you know, it's not going to be extended again. That this time, you know, we are going to be able to go out and disconnect you if you fail to make payment. So just wanted you guys to be aware of that if you hear some discussion or mumblings out in the public about that. Next item, this is coming from Northwest Regional Planning Commission. You guys are aware that in August, the NRPC attached a plaque in honor of Raymond LaRose, who is a longtime NRPC board member and also a resident of the village of Enosburg Falls, to the village-owned kiosk for the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail. Really, NRPC should have asked permission from the village to attach that plaque to the kiosk. They don't own the the kiosk. The village of Enosburg Falls does. So I discussed that with them. They apologized for the mistake, realized they really should have, you know, formally come to the Board of Trustees and asked for permission to do that. In the back of the manager's report, you'll see an email from Greta Brunswick at NRPC apologizing for that oversight and asking formally for permission on behalf of NRPC to allow the plaque for Raymond LaRose to be placed on the kiosk. So whatever the pleasure of the board is regarding that, but they are now making a formal request. Is that okay with the board?
That's fine, but
Good thought.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, very good. I'll let them know then that everything's okay with that, and the board has given them formal permission to do that. Let's see, a quick update on our 2020 roads project. You guys may have noticed we've made substantial progress over the last 10 days or so with the 4 road projects that we had scheduled for 2020. All of the paving is done, was completed yesterday. There is still a little bit more work though that needs to get done. And I'm told that it should be done by the end of this week. So what still needs to be done is they've got some shoulder work to do on the west end of Orchard Street, approximately from where Valentine Drive is, heading west toward Route 105. They've also got some apron and cutoff work to do into some individual drives along Orchard Street. And then they've got all of the striping work to do on all 4 streets that they did. So I'm told that that work is lined up by ECI, the contractor doing the paving work. And they think it's going to be done by the end of this week. They said at the latest, it'll be, they might have some small touch-up items to finish the first part of next week. So maybe Monday or Tuesday of next week. But they think they can get it done the end of this week. Some of it will depend on the weather though, and whether we get some rain days or not. So wanted to make you guys aware of that. And then also lastly, let you know that the new front doors for the village office came in, as well as the new drop box. Those have been installed. So we've got 2 new solid doors at the entrances to the village office and a new drop box, which is attached to the front door, not the vestibule door, but the front door entering into the building itself. We've also put up some signage around that front entrance to, highlight the drop box and let people know that that is a legitimate drop box, and to encourage them to use it. And that's it for manager's report.
All right, thank you, John. We'll move into other business, and I'll kick it off. So can you tell me what's going on in front of Dickinson Avenue on Main Street?
Well, we had a water line. Well, it wasn't really a break. What happened was the connection between the water lines at the intersection of Main Street and Dickinson Avenue came apart. So it wasn't actually a water line break. The lines didn't break. The connection eroded and the lines separated at that intersection. So, we had water just coming out of there. Amazingly, we never had any complaints from any of our customers around that area that they had lost any water pressure or anything. It's kind of amazing because there was a fair amount of water coming out of, where those 2 lines had separated. But yeah, so that's what happened. So we had to dig that up, unfortunately. Once they got below the surface and saw the line, they saw that the the connection had come apart, reconnected it obviously, and backfilled it, covered it up. The bigger part of that, ECI is going to patch for us before they leave completely with the road paving projects. But there are 2 smaller patches that we're going to have to do ourselves. They're too small for ECI to do. They're not in the travel lanes exactly. They're more off to the side of the shoulder of the road. Gary and Kenny think they can do a good patch job on those 2 smaller ones, but the bigger one at that intersection of Dickinson and Main, ECI has agreed to come in and do a patch for us. So hopefully that patch will come out well.
Perfect. That was going to be my next question. All right, thank you, John. Cindy,
Yep.
Did you have something?
I did. The road got paved, which is great, but there's like a manhole cover or something. It's like driving through a pothole. So I don't know, weren't they supposed to like mill the road? Aren't those supposed to be a little
Yeah, so actually I
flush?
talked to Gary about that because there's a couple on Main Street that are actually pretty deep. And his response to me was they sink those a little bit deeper than the road so that the snowplows don't hit them. As you may imagine, a snowplow hitting something that's basically cemented into the road maybe pretty
Right, I understand that, but it's like a 4-inch drop. I mean, it's literally like a major pothole.
right. Okay. Yeah, he said between like a 1/4 inch and a 1/2 inch low. But
Yeah, no, this is more than that.
Okay, so you're saying you're unhappy with it. You're the only person I've heard from complain about that, but
I
I
did
can,
notice a big one on Orchard Street, but I thought they just weren't done what they were doing yet.
yeah, and I don't know, that could be, Jason, maybe that's part of what ECI has to do. I'm not sure. I have, well, I won't get into it. I'll just say I will let Gary know that there are two members of the board that are unhappy with that situation and ask him to follow up with you to either explain how it can be fixed, or if it can't be fixed, explain why it's going to stay the way that it is. Does that sound fair?
Sure. Because there's one across this, right in front of the house that is fine. There's another one that's not fine. So
Yeah. So is that satisfactory to you if I ask him to get in touch with you, and then you can show him exactly where it is, and
sure.
he can talk with you about it and see if there's a way it can be fixed or not. I just don't know, what the situation is with that specific manhole.
No problem.
Okay, so I'll contact Gary and ask him to give you a call, Cindy, and talk with you about it. And I don't know, maybe ECI is going to come back and do some further repairs to that particular manhole. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Does anybody have any business?
Technical difficulties again.
All right, hearing none, I'd like a motion to move into executive session for negotiations in which premature public knowledge would compromise the position of the municipality.
I'll make a
motion.
Heather with the first, Jason with the second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, let's head into executive. Missing Leonard.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me see if I can bump him over.
I was just thinking he was getting good at that too. All right, looks like we got everybody. There was no action in executive, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion, we adjourn.
Leonard with the first, do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Jason with the second. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Bye.
Those opposed? All right, it's unanimous. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good
Good night,
night.
everybody.